They say home is where the heart is. In Jewish tradition, the home is the locus of our life. Well, one of several in Jewish tradition. We have the home, the synagogue, the study hall, the land of Israel, all of these are the Jewish home. On Yom Kippur, I will talk more about some of the other homes that we have and their critical nature to our lives. But this morning on New Year's Day, I'm going to talk to you about your home, your house, your bayit. And Jewish tradition has a lot to say about the Jewish home. The place you sleep in, watch movies or stream shows, the place where you live, your house, your domiciles, whether small or large, rented or owned, it doesn't matter. Unlike Trump and Sanders, size doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be huge. It could be an apartment. It could be a freestanding house, a high-rise, or a lowly basement. None of that matters in Jewish tradition. For as much time and effort as we put on the interiors of our homes, the design, the square footage, none of that actually matters. Instead, as the new year begins, let us reflect on the quality of what makes a home Jewish. And most importantly, what qualities do we need to fill up our Jewish homes? Because these will also be the qualities that we need to fill up our own hearts with on this New Year's. For the Jew, home is where we hang the mezuzah. The mezuzah makes our home a very holy place. You see, when we hang a mezuzah and recite the blessing, we dedicate it to God's values, Jewish values, to the ideal of shalom bayit, peace in our homes and our families. How many of you have made sure that a mezuzah hangs on the entrance to your home? It used to be a commonly observed ritual in Judaism, but I would bet that many of you do not have a mezuzah on the doorway of your house. The mezuzah symbolizes in a concrete way the ideals that you hold on to. It is an outward expression of your Jewish identity. And it helps make the values you believe in visible not just to others, but most importantly, to yourself. You see, the mezuzah is a daily reminder of the way in which our actions should match our beliefs. It is an every moment reminder to be in integrity. Walk in and out of your home with the consistency of the Jew's moral obligation to a higher calling. Hanging a mezuzah on the doorpost of your home, my friends, is an act of mindfulness. The mezuzah reminds us that God dwells with us, in our home, calling us to higher levels of humanness and holiness. And as the V'ahavta prayer that is on the small parchment inside says, when you are in your home or on your way, when you lie down or when you awaken, reminding us that these values are to be front and center, not at just specific times, but all the time. The Talmud shares an ancient story about Onkelos, who was a convert, a Jew by choice. He's a very important man because he translated the Tanakh, the Bible, into Aramaic. He was the son of Kalonymus and a nephew of the Roman Emperor Titus. When Titus was outraged by the conversion of his nephew to Judaism, he sent his advisors to try and persuade him to return to the Roman religion. Onkelos was so convincing in his argument that all of the emperor's envoys became converts themselves. Caesar then sent legionnaires to arrest Onkelos and instructed them not to engage in any conversation with his nephew. When the legionnaires escorted Onkelos out of his home, he smiled, he placed his hand on the mezuzah, and he kissed his hand. Now the soldiers that saw this were absolutely bewildered. But Onkelos explained to them this, that a mortal king has servants standing outside his house on guard. The King of Kings, however, is himself guarding his servants outside their homes. As King David sang in his Psalm 121, God shall guard thy going out and thy coming in from now for forevermore. These words made such a profound impression on the legionnaires that they too converted to Judaism, the Talmud records. This story shows the power of the mezuzah. It has always been a symbol of God's embrace, God's protection, God's love, and it shows the power of the mezuzah to transform our sensibilities and to turn our fear into awe. Inside the mezuzah box, the Shema prayer and the V'ahavta is inscribed on the cloth. That's the name of the parchment inside, reminding us that the home is supposed to be of shalom, of peace. It's one where listening is supposed to take place. We are supposed to listen to one another, after all. Hear what each other says. Hear each other out. Shalom bayit is an overarching value not only meant for spouses, but for children and parents, cousins, grandparents, and siblings. You see, peace in the home comes when we actually listen to each other, respect each other, honor one another for the unique people that we are. But when our homes and our lives are places of turmoil, with family fighting and hurtfulness, then, my friends, the mezuzah itself weeps. The mezuzah may hang on the door, but unless the holy principles are lived, the heart wants to run away. So I'm asking you on this New Year's morning, do you make your home a place of the heart? A sanctuary for your soul and those you live with, whether they're Jewish or not? The place you live and your family is supposed to model the Mikdash, the ancient temple, the place where the relationship between God and the Jewish people took place. You see, it's a model of relationship between lovers and spouse. It's supposed to be a model of our relationships with God and vice versa, based on love, respect, loyalty, and honor. In fact, at a wedding, we remind the wedding couple underneath the canopy, the chuppah, that they are entering that sacred relationship, and we pray that their home be a mikdash ma'at, a sacred home in miniature, if you will, where the Holy One actually dwells. So what does that mean? What does it mean to have God dwell in your house? You don't have to build an extra room, I'm just telling you now. For the Jew, it is about how you treat your spouse, your children, and how your children treat you. How you treat your parents. You remember commandment number 5, honor your parents. But it is also about how we treat ourselves. Our Jewish tradition and practices try to shape each day to elevate ourselves from our baser human nature in order to strive towards God's ultimate gift of love. And so when we hang the mezuzah on the doorpost of our home, we are reminded of God's love for us And therefore, we are supposed to freely share that love with others. You see, the Torah teaches us through these words, Ahavta re'echa kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. Or it reminds us to be sure to leave the four corners of our field so that the poor may eat. These are acts of human love. The way we act in the world is supposed to be about love. And the relationships that we have with our loved ones are an aspect of our relationship with the divine. And from a Jewish perspective, this is hard to do if you have no relationship to a higher power, to the Creator, to what we call God. Or even if you're like Maimonides and believe our intellect, our human ability to create is what we call God. If you have no idea of the divine and the holy, of something that we call God, it's hard to build relationships because the Jewish model is one that stems from that model. Judaism is all about relationships. The covenant between God and the Jewish people given at Mount Sinai is described by our sages as a wedding between God and the Jewish people. And the Torah is our ketubah, our Jewish marriage document. It's a holy metaphor, to be sure, but it's an apt one. When we try to describe the source that harmonizes the universe and the force that connects all life, we seek to cling to the way we cling to our lover. We seek to discover and uncover the source of all and bring it into our everyday world of transactions. We seek to bring that love, that unconditional love, that aspect of divine harmony into the real world. And that is why the phrase, home is where the heart is, becomes important. Because at the center of the home is supposed to be harmony and love. You see, love does indeed make a family. So if you're unhappy at home, it will infect your whole being all the time. If there's no harmony, then the discords of life will destroy a marriage and the people in it. Just look at the latest, one of the recent copies of the New York Times. They had an article on loneliness. It said, more people are lonely today than ever before. In Britain and the United States, roughly 1 in 3 people older than 65 live alone. In the U.S., half of those older than 85 live alone. Studies in both countries teach us that the prevalence of loneliness among people older than 60 is ranging from 10% to 46%. As you have fewer and fewer friends, fewer and fewer family members as we age, it can affect our physical well-being and our emotional well-being. And it's interesting, in Britain, they have created a call-in line for people called the Silver Helpline. It's a 24-hour call center for older adults seeking to fill a basic human need, contact with other people. Scientists there are measuring how loneliness affects everything from our cortisol response to the neurons in our brains. And let's face it, we all know a truth. You can even be lonely when you're in a relationship with someone. So shalom bayit, peace in your home, living with others, human contact of friends, those sacred relationships matter. And that is why filling your home with loved ones, whether or not you're in a partner relationship, is so important. Sometimes our dearest friends, our families of choice, can fill our homes with much love and needed contact. Sometimes it is this synagogue community that can do that as well. And it is an antidote to much of the loneliness that I've described to you today. Our built-in Jewish emphasis on holy days and holiday celebrations all around a meal are one of the ways we combat the epidemic of loneliness. The Sabbath table, which many of us have abandoned for Friday nights at the movies, concerts, restaurant, travel, teaches us and helps us restore the holiness to our homes and the love and harmony that sometimes gets ignored in the busyness of a week. When we take time for a Shabbat dinner with family and friends, light the candles, break bread together, invite people over, bless one another, which spouses have scripts for in our Shabbat tradition. When we bless our children, toast a l'chaim with kiddush, we have a chance to restore the sanctity of our bayit, of our home. We have a chance to whisk away loneliness and create an opportunity to engage our soul with others. On Shabbat, we take a few moments out of our week to focus on our spouses and our children, our dearest of friends, to build a relationship, to not take each other for granted, and perhaps, just perhaps, even take the deep breath that we need ourselves. Even if our partner, our spouse, or our friends aren't Jewish, don't you want to express to him or her your gratitude, your love, to renew the spark that brought you together in the first place? I think it's ironic, the things that science now teaches us, that is actually good for us, actually part of the ancient wisdom of our own Judaism. Share a meal with others on Shabbat. Have a family group, a community you look forward to being with. And my friends, science proves you will live a longer, happier, and more content life. And we Jews on Shabbat, we do that with God's presence surrounding us, shielding us in an embrace of love. Indeed, for us, home is where the heart is supposed to be. But what if you don't have that? What if your home is just a place to stop and change your clothes? Where then do you seek the intimacy of the relationships that can and should define our Jewishness? Professor Vanessa Oakes of the University of Virginia writes in an article in the Cross Currents magazine the following: within Jewish homes, things, people, and even times of day and season of the year and of life interact in a fluid process through which things make the home Jewish, by which things are animated by Jewish life and absorbed by it in specifically Jewish ways. Good professor talk. But she goes on. The idea is well expressed in Sylvia Rothschild's autobiographical account of the holiday of Shavuot. You remember, that's when we get the 10 Commandments. Right? Many of you might have been confirmed on Shavuot. And so Rothschild writes, on Shavuos, the Yiddish, the 3 small rooms of our family of 5 called home became a magical place, a stage, a bower redolent with the smell of fresh green leaves, roses, and peonies. My pleasure was not only in the transformation we brought about, but even more in the seasonal discovery that it was possible to alter what was familiar and prosaic, that escape could come not only in daydreams, but through physically changing things. Professor Ox documents for us that surrounding ourselves with the rhythm of Jewish life, of the holiday seasons, Jewish books, Jewish ritual objects, are more than just tribal vestiges or material things. Those things actually have the holy power to transform our very being. Whether you have children or not, the Jewish objects around you, maybe that Kiddush cup on the shelf from your bat mitzvah, or the Jewish book on the coffee table. Maybe you have your grandparents' Chanukiah stuck away in some cabinet. All of these impact your being, and each one of them call to you. Like the shofar's plaintive call that we will hear in a few minutes, these too cry out to you. Remember who you are. Remember the nobility of Jewish tradition. Remember, you possess that nobility. And most of all, remember to love. V'ahavta re'echa kamocha. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God. Love your husband. Love your wife. Love your children. Honor your parents. Cherish your friends. Experience a peaceful home. The book of Exodus describes the sanctuary, the Mishkan, which Moses and the Jewish people were going to build in the desert. They constructed it before leaving the Sinai region and carried it with them throughout the 40 years of their wandering. Then they brought it into the land of Israel, and later it was replaced by the temple and when King Solomon built it in Jerusalem. In the book of Exodus, God tells Moses, "They shall make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell in them. Vasuli migdas b'shochanti betocham." God does not say, "I will dwell in it," meaning the sanctuary. But God says, "Betocham, I will dwell in them." Our sages explain this means that God dwells in the heart of each Jewish man and woman. Each person is sacred, and the home, by extension, in which they dwell, is sacred too. This New Year's season, we are reminded that the Holy Presence is with us, near us, and in us. And our task is to bring forward that holy, sacred pathway in everything we do. Make it a heart-centered year where God dwells betochenu, inside of us. The mezuzah is one way we have of reminding us of that holy, sacred pathway on leaving your home each day and returning each night, of creating a place, a home where the heart surely dwells. But too often, my friends, you just haven't read the instructions. So consider this story. Bob Johnson, owner of Johnson's Widgets, was known for running a very profitable factory. And every day he followed a very detailed management routine to ensure the utmost productivity and efficiency. One day, Johnson said, "I need a vacation." So he asked Jake, his number 2, to look after the factory while he was gone. Jake was a little skeptical about his own ability to manage such a complex operation. After all, he was only number 2. "Don't worry," said Johnson. "I've got it all worked out to a science. I've written down the instructions and posted it to the wall in the office." Johnson was feeling very assured, sure that Jake would do everything according to the plans. And so Johnson enjoyed finally a great vacation. But upon his return, he found the factory a complete shambles. Equipment was broken down. Materials were strewn across the floor. Workers were kind of standing around, twiddling their thumbs. And worst of all, the office area was completely destroyed. And Jake, his number 2, was just standing there, his clothes torn, his face smudged with the taped instructions smoldering on the wall. "What happened?" cried Johnson. "I put all the instructions clearly on the wall there." Jake looked down dejectedly. I guess I forgot to read them." It's the same with us. The Torah gives us instructions for living, how to actualize our potential, how to heal ourselves and the world, how to build healthy relationships, and how to raise healthy children, and how to find happiness, meaning, and fulfillment. You see, God's got it all worked out to a science. And God told us to put those instructions on the wall, on the doorposts of our house, to remind us of all those instructions for living. Many people have that custom to touch the mezuzah when they walk through the doorway, and then to kiss their hand. As we pass by, we focus on God's instructions posted on the wall. The Torah demonstrates how to make Jewish values permanent, an everyday part of our lives. To help us remember the message, we repeat the verses when we arise in the morning, just before we go to bed at night, and we make it permanent, affixing the Shema to the doorpost. It's the original Jewish billboard. But don't make the mistake of Jake in our story. Don't kiss the mezuzah by mere rote. You see, for we must read and ponder the instructions, find time to study them, and yes, chai bahem, live by them. My friends, in this new year of 5777, you have the option of making a home filled with heart, with God, mindfulness, and Jewish values. May the mezuzah on your doorpost ever be a reminder of that heart that can be yours, and the holy instructions inside that will help you walk a pathway of peace of mind and home that is the Jewish promise. Ken Yehi Ratzon.